Let's change the subject now. I guess being friends as we have since 1969, we talked about a lot of things. One of the things that I always remember is it seems like you've had some pretty important dreams, some dreams with some heavy significance, and I just thought you might like to share some of those with.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I can probably fill you on two or three of them. I guess one of the earliest dreams I ever remember having was a dream that my mom and dad went out for dinner, and I was staying with my cousin Jeff. I do have a cousin named Jeff. Well, anyway, he did use babysit for me a lot. Well, in the dream, we were having these things that looked kind of like biscuits, and they were sitting there on the stove with butter on them, but they weren't biscuits. They were Jeffs. That's what they were. Well, so I asked my dad, I said, how do you spell Jeff anyway? Well, when I said that, the dream suddenly shifted over to the Galena, Kansas Elks Club, and my dad set up a chalkboard in the room at the Elks Club. He said, Jeff, J-E-F-F-E-Q-F. And the last F he said real high and shrill. Okay, then suddenly the dream shifted back to the kitchen in my house. Well, the evening went on pretty ordinary-like, and a little later in the evening, I said to my cousin Jeff, I said, I want another one of those. And he said, oh, okay, you want another one? Well, that's fine. So he got up, went out there, put some butter on it, and we ate a couple more Jeffs. Well, then the scene shifted to the next day, and my mom and dad were back home, and she went over to the refrigerator, except instead of the refrigerator, it was actually the front of the dishwasher. She opened it up, and there were shelves, and they're like a refrigerator. And anyway, there was a little scrap of something on one of the shelves that looked kind of like a piece of a biscuit. And I said, oh, what's that, a biscuit? And she said, well, yeah, I guess it is. And then she suddenly said, that's not a biscuit. That's a piece of that leftover Jeff. And then she said, even if Rosemary hadn't have come over, how long would it have been before you would have eaten that Jeff? So, that's back in about fourth grade. The civil defense sirens have just been recently installed in Joplin, and for some reason I've had a lot of dreams pertaining to the civil defense sirens. Well, I dreamed that we were sitting in our fourth grade class with Mrs. Nathan, and suddenly the fire drill went off. So our whole class went outside and lined up on F Street, and she said, okay, everybody look up at the civil defense siren. So it was a perfectly beautiful, clear day. We looked up the civil defense siren, and all of a sudden it started making a noise like and slowly turning around. And then it finished doing that, and a voice came over the civil defense siren that said, a Hawaiiana has been forced to win. And then it went a little longer, and then suddenly the civil defense siren just self-destructed. The horn part of it just sprung off with a large spring deal and just kind of sagged down the side of the thing. And then suddenly someone said, look, over to the west. We looked over in the west, and there was a small plane, like an old-fashioned aeroplane or something, just kind of hovering in the sky, and the little thing was hanging out of it on a rope that was shaped like a bell. And we suddenly realized that that was a type of bomb known as a Hawaiiana, and if the rope was cut, it would explode and destroy Joplin. So everybody said, we gotta find a fallout shelter fast. Where's the nearest one?
Oh no, a airplane.
Oh no. Pretty good. But anyway, I said, well, the nearest thing is my basement. It'll have to do for a fallout shelter. I only live just right down the street. So my entire fourth grade class, as well as most of Columbia School, went over to my house. We all just came pouring into my house, went down into the basement to take cover. When we got down to the basement, the house had no foundation. It was all open all the way around. And I suddenly said, oops, this isn't going to work. And the dream ended. Okay. Well, one final dream that I can talk about is this happened. The thing about this, I'm not sure this was a dream. I think this really happened in real life. It is so bizarre, this has got to be a dream. You know what I mean? Well, it happened when I was about 8 years old. I dreamed my mom and dad were going out to eat. For some reason that topic entered into a lot of dreams, and my grandmother was staying with me. Well, for some reason, my mom and dad needed to get a hold of my brother Tim before they left, and Tim at that time was working at what it is now Jenny's Drive-In in Joplin. We owned it at the time. It was Zimm's Drive-In, which is real cool, but anyway, they tried to call Tim down there at the drive-in, and the line was busy. Well, they tried to call again a couple minutes later, still busy. They just kept trying to call, and it was busy every time. And they thought, oh, come on, there cannot be that many calling customers this late. He's talking on the phone to his girlfriend. That's what's going on. Well, so they thought, this is ridiculous. We've got to get Tim off the phone at the drive-in. He's not supposed to be using the phone for his own stuff anyway. So they called the operator to have her break into the line somehow. Well, so they called the operator and said, hi operator, could you break into call at such and such a number, which is drive-in, and see what's going on. Well, so they did, and the operator's voice came back over the line and said, "O ye man, sickness or death." And I looked at my grandmother and I said, what does that mean anyway? And she said, well, it means somebody's real sick or about to die. I said, oh. And suddenly I remembered one that I remember pretty clearly, and I know for sure it happened on the morning of September 1st, 1974. I dreamed that my mom was in the hospital at the time, and my dad was there. Actually, he wasn't still alive at the time, but he was still alive in the dream. Well, my dad was around, and one of his friends was staying over at the house that night. Anyway, we were down in my basement room, and my dad was sleeping on the bottom bunk, and I was sleeping on the top bunk. Well, I dreamed that we got up, and I looked over at my collection of monster models, which were a wonderful collection.
Aurora models.
Yeah, Aurora monster models, wonderful things. Well, I looked over at them, and their faces were all running and gooey and everything, kind of like the front of a Peter Gabriel album or something. And I said, Dad, my monster models, what's happening with them? He walked over and looked at him, and he said, they must have gotten married or something. Well, suddenly, about that time, I remembered that Steve Carroll, the day before, had said that he was going to move some things with psychokinesis in my lab room. Well, at that point, as I remember that, I heard things in my lab room, which was the next room over, making noise, but the door was closed. And I thought, I'm almost afraid to open this door. Well, almost, yes. But I went over to the lab room door, and I opened it up, and there were Erlenmeyer and Florence flasks bouncing up and down in the air, and there was weird music playing, and flasks and bottles of chemicals and ring stands and everything were just bouncing around all over the whole lab, and I suddenly made a noise like, and I woke myself up making that noise. I actually had made the noise out loud, and I think my mom actually heard it.